This program is brought to you by the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC.
This week on NDDC Today.
Relocation to the new headquarters by the IMC led by the acting MD and acting EDP. Niger Delta Youth Council visits Professor Ponde, where he debunked and cleared the air on recent allegations leveled against the commission. Charles Orderly press conference, where he also debunked allegations of missing funds in the NDDC. NDDC donates palliatives to Imo and Bayelsa states to cushion the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the people of these states. And then a look at some ongoing NDDC projects in spite of all the controversy in Rivers State.
This is NDDC Today. Welcome.
So it's a long light that never sees the day, they say. All the stormy sessions we've heard about the NDDC with so much controversy coming from all over the place. And the NDDC being in the eye of the storm in this past couple of months. All that is filtering down as, many people are finding it difficult to prove so many allegations against the NDDC. Today, we have good news for you. The NDDC has finally relocated from its Aba Road residence to its permanent site, a site that's taken 28 years in the making. It's a historic landmark, and the NDDC MD, acting MD, was determined to be the first to occupy this building, as we shall now see. This is the new headquarters of the Niger Delta Development Commission. A magnificent edifice of local architectural enterprise of the NDDC. Another multi-billion naira flagship project that could be counted now in going forward as one of the standing landmarks in the Niger Delta.
We have restored peace in the Niger Delta region and maintained our own production levels. The head office of the Niger Delta Development Commission will be commissioned shortly.
President Muhammadu Buhari on his June 12, 2020 Democracy Day broadcast. A few days after the president's broadcast, the Commission's interim management committee members, led by the acting managing director, Professor Keme Bradikumo Ponde, sprang into action to actualize the president's promise by moving into the edifice. Conceived 25 years ago by the short-lived Oil Minerals Producing Areas Development Commission, OMPADEC, the project suffered a delay in its execution and was left unfunded for several years due to no budgetary allocation of funds on the part of the successive boards of the NDDC that inherited all liabilities of OMPADEC, even at its inception in the year 2000. In 2010, the then board of the NDDC decided to terminate with the full permission of the Federal Executive Council in a meeting chaired by the former President Goodluck Jonathan to terminate the existing contract. Thereafter, in 2016, the Senator Undoma Egba-led board, which had Obong Nsema Ekere as managing director, re-awarded the project to another contractor, Rodnap, for the speedy completion of the headquarters building. It can be recalled that from the inception of the Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC in the year 2000, the Commission has witnessed 7 managing directors from 5 different substantive management boards and 8 acting managing directors. In this succession order, it all began with Engineer Godwin Omene, then Honorable Emmanuel Edesiri Agwarambodo, Mr. Timi Alaibe, Mr. Chibuzo Gwoha, Dr. Christian Obo, Barrister Dan Abia, and Obong Nsema Ekere as substantive managing directors. while late Pastor Godspower Ageniga, Dr. Christy Atako, Mrs. Ibim Semenitari, Professor Brian Baefa, and Dr. Mrs. Enya Akwagaga, Dr. Gbene Joinunye, and lastly, Professor Daniel Beredikumo Ponde, all in acting capacities as MDs. Each of these persons have their efforts printed all over the new headquarters. Most of their efforts were coupled with the oversight functions of both national assemblies, which have sought to keep the NDDC and the project contractors on their toes in the last 20 years.
It's sad that the project that started 20 years ago, we are still talking about site inspection.
I'm not impressed with the project, with the progress of the work. From time to time, I'll be here to do my work. I'll bring my table and my chair here and work it together because there must be value for money.
This project cannot remain like this abandoned for 23 years without being commissioned. That's why I said they must give me their commitment that they will fund this project and will work together to supervise it to ensure that come next year, Mr. President chooses the period to come here and celebrate with them that for the first time in over 24 years that NDDC now has a permanent site and will no longer be paying rent.
After 20 years, the management, staff and stakeholders of the NDDC and the people of the Niger Delta region, and indeed Nigerians at large, can now heave a sigh of relief for the official breaking news of the near 100% completion of the long-awaited, magnificent, modern corporate headquarters of the Niger Delta Development Commission. According to Professor Ponde, the relocation of the IMC from the 167 Abal Road head office address to the new permanent headquarters on the Eastern Bypass, Port Harcourt, will place the Commission on a better pedestal to deliver on its core mandate.
The movement to these headquarters, I believe, should also mean an improvement with the services rendered by the NDDC. We believe will be more automated, more digitalized, and more professional in the way things are being done.
He re-emphasized to the press that the headquarters will soon be delivered and commissioned by President Muhammadu Buhari in the very near future.
So it's a modern edifice, and I think it's a place that everybody will be proud of when it's fully completed and functional.
Professor Ponde, while regretting the delays in finishing of every other necessary touch needed to put the building on a state of 100% completion and ready for its commissioning, also noted that the new headquarters will accommodate all the directorates and departments of the Commission once it's put to use to its fullest capacity.
Hopefully, we'll sort out the difficulties we have in accommodation at the present headquarters, because if you go there, you see quite a number. The office spaces are very small, cramped. This is more spacious, and there are enough. I think there are enough offices for everybody.
The hope of the Niger Delta people, and the Commission in particular, has been rekindled, according to the words of the Executive Director Project, Dr. Cairo Ojugbo, who spoke in appreciation of the work done so far in the permanent headquarters.
The contractor has done very well. I want to also commend him and thank him, and hoping that he will be able to conclude this in the shortest possible period while we await for Mr. President to come and commission this project.
The feeling of exhilaration palpable with the MD and the acting EDP, first occupants of this building that's taken 28 years in the making. And shortly, all the directors of the NDDC will be able to feel comfortable in this edifice, and the work of the NDDC will continue, which we must remind ourselves is still develop the Niger Delta, not be involved in, parrying off allegations of all this and all that. In that regard, the Niger Delta Youth Council recently visited the NDDC. The NDDC used the occasion to again parry off some allegations concerning the expenditure of the IMC in the short months he has been in office.
The acting managing director of the Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC, Professor Ponde, has once again debunked the several allegations being leveled against the commission by various groups and associations. Professor Ponde spoke recently in Port Harcourt during an audience with some members of the Niger Delta Youth Council. On the award of COVID-19 contract by the commission, Ponde explained that the contract awarded in this regard was in three parts: supply of medical equipment, provision of palliatives, and public enlightenment, and this was treated as an emergency contract with presidential approval.
We have not awarded any contracts apart from this one we're talking about, the one with the presidential approval.
The NDDC boss lamented the frequent changes of management of the commission and observed that this will not bring the desired development to the Niger Delta region. He also used the opportunity to appeal to the National Assembly to use their oversight functions to assist the NDDC to persuade the oil companies and the federal government to meet up their outstanding financial obligations to the commission.
Tell those who are going in NDDC to please bring this money so that it can be put into use. The NDDC is not, I know things are not going wrong, but the NDDC is being owed a lot of money. Every oil company is supposed to pay 3% of its budgets, annual budgets. So the NDDC is there in the act, but they have gone scot-free for years.
Addressing the payment issues with regards to the NDDC permanent headquarters, Professor Ponde noted that the contract for the construction of the headquarters building was long awarded before the IMC came on board, and that the certificate of completion cannot be issued yet, as construction work was still ongoing. Earlier in his address, President of the Niger Delta Youth Council, Mr. Samuel Ebesua, had informed the NDDC acting MD that their visit was to seek clarification on the many allegations leveled against the commission from several quarters.
The illegal payments, we have not done any illegal payments, we have paid people who are owed.
The acting MD NDDC meeting with the Niger Delta Youth Council and answering some questions from them. Yes, the youth should be asking questions, and the MD is quite up to it in parrying off a lot of the allegations that are disturbing the work of the IMC. It is the wish of us all that the IMC be given a chance to do its job, as the youth they themselves expressed. Now, still talking about allegations, it never ends. The NDDC is in the eye of the storm, as should be expected. Such a volatile organization or commission trying to provide support to nine Niger Delta states, 145 local governments, 20 million people is not an easy task. So you don't expect him one day to actually sleep with his eyes closed. So it's fine. The director of the Corporate Affairs of the NDDC, Mr. Charles Orderly, has found himself coming to the fore again to ward off some further allegations.
Speaking during a press conference at the Commission's headquarters in Port Harcourt recently, the NDDC Director, Corporate Affairs, Mr. Charles Orderly, explained that the 33 billion naira that was paid was just a very little part of a debt portfolio of about 2 trillion naira. He said the Commission has paid what he described as historic debts, amounting to about 33 billion naira from the inception of the expanded IMC on February the 20th, 2020.
The historical debts cover our debts to our vendors, some persons who've been owed 1, 2, 3 million for over 7-8 years. It was actually intended to alleviate the sufferings and plights of our Niger Delta people The essence is to save lives and livelihood of the Niger Delta people, because some people borrowed money from banks to do little supplies, and some of them got very ill, were in the hospital, and there was nothing that the IMC could have done but to assuage to this very humane issue.
Explaining why some NDDC contractors had not been paid, Odili said, "The National Assembly has instructed us not to pay for road projects, and most of the contractual obligations we owe to our contractors who are complaining are those who have done major road projects."
So we have instruction from the National Assembly not to pay, and we are abiding by those instructions. When it is lifted, all our contractors, especially those who have done road jobs, will get their payments.
He lamented that the 2019 budget of the NDDC was never implemented because the final budget got to the Commission 6 weeks before its expiration. Odili appealed for quick approval of the 2020 budget.
Once we have a budget, a lot of things, a lot of action will be expedited. So I think that's the thing we should do now, to appeal for a quick approval of the 2020 budget.
Charles Odili, Director of Corporate Affairs, finding himself once more in the eye of the storm and having to ward up all kinds of allegations, including the fact that the IMC has spent so much money in his couple of months of existence. And Charles is saying, no, the NDDC has only spent 33 billion to pay for its outstanding debt. We should never forget that the NDDC is also supposed to provide a way of livelihood for Niger Deltans. So if we miss that point, then we miss the whole point of the NDDC. So the IMC is saying there were difficult payments, arrears left behind, people are suffering, and they have to pay. Well, someone has to puncture a hole in that. Now, the IMC has also been looking at its primary objective of, relieving the COVID-19 victims in 9 of the 9 Niger Delta states. Recently, it's been trying to go through some of the states one by one to provide palliatives. This week, it was the turn of Bayelsa and Imo states.
The food items donated include 1,078 bags of rice, 305 bags of beans, 288 bags of gari, 1,941 cartons of Indomie noodles, 95 cans, each 25 liters, of palm oil. Other items include 2,200 examination gloves, 600 cartons of syringes, infrared thermometers, 6 oxygen masks, ventilators, 6 ICU beds, and sanitary materials, among others. Presenting these items to the state government recently in Owerri, the NDDC Acting Managing Director, represented by Engineer Tony Okane, Director Project Monitoring and Supervision NDDC Owerri Office, noted that the Commission was aware of the socio-economic challenges posed by the pandemic, as he explained that was why the Commission committed funds to assist the 9 oil-producing state governments to fight the disease across the Niger Delta region. Receiving the items on behalf of the Imo State Government, the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Mr. Nnamdi Anya-Ehie, promised that the items would be put to good use in line with the efforts of the government to mitigate the effects of the disease in the state, as he sought for the continued support from the Commission in the policies and programs of the state government. Similarly, the NDDC also donated medical equipment and allied consumables to the Bayelsa State Government to help in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The Principal Secretary to the Bayelsa State Governor, who represented the Governor at the occasion, thanked the NDDC for partnering with the state to fight the COVID-19 pandemic and promised that the state will ensure the proper use of the materials.
Now, cartons and cartons and containers of products. That's what you and I are seeing right now. Now, it's up to the state governors or the state governments to distribute all those to their people, particularly those who are adversely affected by the COVID-19 phenomenon. You can't do everything at once, but the IMC is doing it stage by stage. And so we should feel the full impact of how this palliatives have affected the entire 20 million people of the Niger Delta. Now, as we said before, the NDDC was set up to develop the Niger Delta. Let us not forget this. And the work of the IMC must always have that in mind. So they're not reneging on this fact. Contracts are still being executed. Roads are still being constructed, as we see from this report from our correspondent who recently toured Rivers State.
Despite the numerous allegations being leveled against the NDDC and its Interim Management Committee, IMC, development and provision of life-changing infrastructure for the people of the Niger Delta region remains the Commission's main focus as work on various project sites in the region are ongoing. With the forensic audit of the NDDC ordered by President Muhammadu Buhari last year now being carried out, many contractors who obviously do not want their reputation soiled or get indicted by the forensic auditors in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic have gone back to site to complete or commence work on some of the abandoned NDDC projects across the Niger Delta region. Some of the NDDC projects which have been revitalized to ensure their completion include the construction of a 1-kilometer rigid pavement on New Road, Elingbu Link Road off East-West Road in Obiakpo local government area in Rivers State, where construction work being carried out here is over 60% complete. The condition of this road had been of great concern to the residents of the area over the years because of the difficulties they have had to endure with accessing the area due to the terrible state of the road. This scenario had even led to some of the residents relocating to other areas as they could no longer cope with the challenges they went through to get to their homes, especially during the rainy season when the situation was at its peak.
This problem started when a contractor that was awarded a contract to do a drainage around Origwe Elimbu Road by the state government. The contractor diverted flood here, and we've been underwater for almost 5-6 years.
I had friends who actually lived here before I came, but all of a sudden they all started leaving this area one after the other, abandoning their buildings because of the level of flood that was thrown into this neighborhood.
With construction work ongoing and past the halfway mark, business and trading activities, which hitherto had practically collapsed before the construction work, are on the increase.
The economic, so many things around this community has actually gone down because people have packed out. You don't have any business running in this place any longer because it was not almost inhabitable. But with the way it's going now, this is going to bring a facelift. It's going to bring a smile to the people.
Like I may stay from morning to night, no market, but by the work of the road, vehicle will move and I will sell.
Here on Church Road, Court Estate Road and other adjoining roads in Elumbu in Obiakpo local government area in Rivers State, work is ongoing to repair the failed and unmotorable sections of the road. Before the NDDC intervention on these roads, most of the sections had been completely washed away by erosion, which rendered it virtually impossible to drive through or even walk on, especially during the rainy season, thereby making lives of inhabitants miserable and unbearable.
This road before now was flooded. We had drain issues. We had potholes and a lot of lackadaisical contractors before now. But when we came on site, in fact we came on site since, to be precise, February this year, and as now you can see that we are almost through. We didn't waste time on the site. We employed the youths in the society here.
It is expected that at the completion of this project, business and other commercial activities will improve as residents will be able to access areas that were once difficult to get to with ease.
What we are seeing today is a thing of joy to my people and the entire Elimbu people, including the Court Estate community. We are very happy of what we are seeing here today.
I want to appreciate and thank the management of NDDC for this intervention, and they actually got sent. We've tried before now to manage movement in this estate, and then the infrastructural development. But as you know, there's always a limitation to what individuals can do. So this intervention is actually timely.
The construction of this road has not gone without a few hiccups, and residents of this estate would be more than happy if these constraints can be addressed by the NDDC.
We are asking that whatever it is that has been done, beautiful, but in order that the job will meet the logical intent and purpose of NDDC, that section that was cut off should be reconsidered if it is in the area of additional scope to the contractor, beautiful, so that the water and the drainages will be properly linked up. And until the drainages are linked up properly, we will continue to have this flood here, even when they finish. So those are the challenges.
Still in Obiakpo local government area of River State, the repair and rehabilitation work on the failed and unmotorable sections of Eliohani Farm Road extension is another example that typifies the NDDC's ambition to link every community in the Niger Delta region with good and accessible roads. With the cooperation of all stakeholders in this area, this 3-kilometer long road is 100% complete and in use.
After the NDDC do their work, we thank them because the road was so smooth and clear. Now everything is working well.
Benefits that come with this new road can best be appreciated by those residents who had to live through this bitter experience of having to navigate a totally dilapidated road in the past that denied them access to their homes after feeling neglected by the government.
This road, long before now, it has not been motorable, and even those passerby without vehicle, it has not been very difficult for them to pass through due to the bad gully and bad trenches along the road. And I want to thank first and foremost the NDDC for at least remembering Eliohani community in the time, because we know the challenges this road has posed to the community and those living around.
With the completion of this road project in Eliohani community by the NDDC, the residents are hopeful that other infrastructural developments of the community will be accelerated.
Now, it's difficult to tell all these respondents who actually give testimony of the usefulness of those roads to the people who lived in those areas. It's difficult to tell them that the NDDC is not working. And also think that people should go around to find out things for themselves. The NDDC will continue to persist in developing the Niger Delta. And the IMC is keen into that mandate. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you same time next week.